Welcome to the SBI Podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly broadcast dedicated to helping you make your number by getting your peers to share with you how they are making theirs. Today we're going to demonstrate how to improve the efficiency of the sales team. So why this topic on this day? Sales ops has become a catch-all phrase. The sales ops leader gets assigned all the work no one else wants to do. Often underfunded and understaffed, sales operations leaders fail to deliver a meaningful revenue contribution. Yet, the best growth executives understand that sales ops is the most strategic sales function in the entire company. They understand that when deployed correctly, sales ops can impact revenue growth in a very meaningful way. Do not starve this vital department. If you do, you're going to miss your revenue goal. My name is Greg Alexander. I'm the CEO and I'm your host today. Helping me with our demonstration is an executive who knows a thing or two about this topic. His name is Fris, and he's the Vice President of Global Sales Strategy and Operations at Ryder. Chris, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So, Christopher Fris, I usually add the Christopher in, so I missed the rhyming name there. But, I've had some experience with the folks over at SBI in the past and with a number of other firms across the industry. So, now working with Ryder, drive their sales strategy forward. So happy to be here, Greg.
Okay, fantastic. All right, I'm going to start at a high level, and as we go through the questions and the segments, we're going to bring it closer to home. But I'm starting at a high level for a reason, which is I believe that sales operations and sales strategy is, well, strategic. So I want to start with the first question, which is, what are the business outcomes the sales operation team is charged to deliver?
Yeah, so I think in short, Greg, I'd say enablement to achieve the sales plan, as you put it, make the number. But it's more than that. It's setting the strategy that enables the sales team to be more efficient, and in that probably would take it into our charter is to advance their approach, advance their learnings, recommend direction, push pieces in front of them that will enable them to be more efficient in the long run.
Okay, fantastic. The way that I like to think about this, which might be helpful for those listening and watching, is that the sales leadership team, they're in the business every day because they have the number to make. But if you're just in the business and you're not on the business, sometimes you're on what I call the expectations treadmill. Every month, every quarter, every year, you're running a little faster, up a little bit of a steeper hill to try to hit the number. What this strategic entity known as sales or operations can do for you is make sure that while we're running on the treadmill, we're also working on the business so things don't have to be so hard. Not just tactics, but also strategic. So once I understand the business outcomes, as we just heard from Christopher, we now come down to strategic focus areas of the sales operations team. So think of these as kind of programs that allow us to accomplish the outcomes that we just discussed. So Chris, could you share with the audience a little bit about some of your strategic focus areas?
Yeah, sure, Greg. After strategically focusing on getting funded and getting some staffing, so we're all challenged with that same challenge you put up front. But I think our driver is around sales effectiveness, and you would set up the discussion today around sales efficiency, and I think that efficiency is a primary element that drives you into being more effective. So when we think about areas like channel execution, we think about areas trying to advance the understanding of our sales team around keeping focused and keeping abreast of buying trends, and in particular, how to have customer-focused conversations in the new world of sales that stay away from the features and benefits and try and drive deeper into the prospect's business. So a lot of our strategic focus of late has been around those areas. Certainly, we're always paying attention to metrics. We're always paying attention to the pipeline and other metrics that I'm sure anybody is paying attention to their business today. But I think there's other elements along that strategic front, particularly as it relates to customers and relates to how you go about attacking them with your channels that are more important strategically.
Okay. There are some people, believe it or not, that are watching and listening to this that do not have sales operations, or maybe they have it and it's a brand new thing. You've been doing this for a long time, so I'm going to ask you a question about the organizational chart. And I'm asking it because I want those that might be new to this discipline to think about how sales operations is really at the nexus of so many interlock points across the company. So if you could, describe your sales ops org chart, and particularly the working relationships that it has with several stakeholder groups, and I'll spell those out for you. So executive leadership, which isn't just sales leadership, but the executive team across the board, product management, sales leadership themselves, the finance department, the marketing team, HR, and increasingly information technology.
Okay, there's a mouthful, so
yeah.
Strap in. Yeah, I think before I even go into those detailed relationships, Greg, I think it is critical to understand sales operations and the multiple elements of it that are, even where people say they have it, what do they really have? And I think that the most critical mistake to avoid is that your sales operations people are purely a reporting function. You know, if they're going to be purely a reporting function, you might as well leave that with finance and save yourself the headache. If you don't have a team that's aligned to sales and sales-only objectives, which typically the finance team is not, I think you do miss a key piece of moving the business forward. And those relationships are critical, as you point out. So I fortunately here have an executive who my group reports directly to, so I report directly to the CSO, which I would also highly recommend in any organization that decides to launch sales ops or has one today. And I have an executive leader that understands it and gets it and treats it as a strategic function. But I think that's the critical relationship with executive leadership, is along strategy. With product management, you know, they obviously do their own sets of reports and metrics around each one of their products and what they're moving and what's not and how their end results are. But oftentimes they don't get out in front of where and why things are not in the pipeline and not being approached, and the dialogues aren't being had at the point of the sale. So we get in front of that and feed them the information that they need in advance of the year, month, quarter closing around where the products are going. In sales leadership, the critical piece there is, I think, to be seen as a support role, both in terms of they do need metrics, and we provide a number of them, but also we try and refine what we give them to, you know, use our intelligence to work on what's going to be the most effective metrics, because you know, dashboarding has become king, and unfortunately, you know, on my dashboard, I pay attention to the speed my car is going, and that's about it, right? So that's easy for me. That way I'm paying attention to the road, and I think it's just critical with dashboards and with reports. So I think keeping sales leadership informed, but keeping it focused. On the finance department side, you know, we try and mitigate what they try and measure. And how would I say that? I think it's important that finance oftentimes measures what finance wants to see, not necessarily how are you going to get there and what's the supportive metrics. So we try and focus on not just the end result of how many beans got produced at the end of the day, but how are we going to get there? How do we support our team with the data they need so that the finance team at the end of the day gets the numbers they want? I think the only other thing I talk about in finance is pricing. Pricing is not within my group, so we do a lot of interface with the pricing team around trying to get them to understand market-based pricing rather than cost-plus pricing. On the marketing team, we have a really close relationship with the marketing team, forged over time, I would say, though. So it's not a perfect world, and it never is. But I think it's important for sales operations to play that role because, as you well know, there's oftentimes a rift between sales and marketing. Yeah. I try and be the Switzerland of that rift, if you will. With respect to HR and IT, again, very critical involvements. HR handles the comp plans. Many times comp is under sales ops, not in my particular organization with Ryder, nor is incentives involved in there. So training and incentives is a very critical piece. We drive what needs to be trained. We drive the core strategic elements of the sales comp plans. So very tight relationship there with HR around that. And IT, obviously data is king these days, so we need to stay very abreast of the IT guys, and even our own systems, our CRM and the other enablement tools we have are critical with IT support. So,
so I mean, just through that explanation, you can see how strategic sales ops really is, because you have to interface and connect with and work with and collaborate with all of these different people within your company to be successful. And if you're not, as a sales ops leader, then you'll just get reduced to, somebody who runs reports, which I know is not anything that we want to be reduced to. All right, this is a good time for a break. So let's go ahead and take a quick break here from the interview to invite you to participate in a remarkable experience. I would like to personally invite you to the studio, a multi-million-dollar, one-of-a-kind, state-of-the-art executive briefing center located in Dallas, Texas. It was developed by SBI specifically for executive teams inside of companies with aggressive revenue growth goals who don't have a lot of time to waste and have a lot on the line. To grow revenues faster than your industry and your competitors every month, quarter, and year is pretty hard to do, and a visit to the studio increases the probability of making your number. We like to say you can get 3 months of work done in 3 days by coming to the studio. So visit our website, salesbenchmarkindex.com/the studio to book your visit. This is the SBI Podcast. We'll be back in a moment.
Your finish line is your number, and the only way to reach it is to make certain everyone is pulling their weight and headed in the same direction. That's why SBI uses proven techniques to bring everyone on your team on board with successful, standardized sales programs, enabling victory at the turn of every quarter.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the SBI Podcast. This is Greg Alexander, and my guest today is Christopher Fris, Vice President of Global Sales Strategy and Operations at Ryder. Today, we're demonstrating how to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of the sales team. So we're going to jump back into the questions here. And Christopher, I want to get to analytics, which seems to be all the rage these days. And specifically, what we're seeing out there is this kind of continuum of analytics. And let me briefly describe this for the benefit of the audience, and I'll get your commentary on this. So analytics has really kind of 4 steps to it. So there's descriptive analytics that says, this is what has happened in the past. I am accurately describing the past, which sounds easy, but it isn't easy. It's tough to describe the past. Diagnostics says, why did it happen? So yes, I understand what happened in the past, but why did that take place? Predictive says, if everything stays the same, I'm going to predict the outcome at some point in the future. And prescriptive, which is really advanced, is, okay, I'm predicting the future. I don't like the outcome. I want to change the outcome before it happens, so I am prescribing a set of activities to alter the future. This all requires systems, methodologies, data, talent, and continuous improvement. So when you hear that kind of 4-step continuum from left to right there, share with me where you are on your analytics journey.
Yeah, so we're dabbling into prescriptive, but I would say that a fair amount of it is still in the diagnostic and predictive stage. And I'd love to have more time to talk about prescriptive with you, Greg, because I think there's a big piece out there, and a lot of these predictive analytics that are out there now in terms of big data and the ability to trace people's actions backwards, reverse engineer them, and predict what the future could be, and even, as you point out, alter the future is fascinating work going on in the big data space. But I'll stay with where we're at today, maybe a lot of organizations are, which along the lines of one of the things that we dive deeply into his win-loss analysis, because I think it is critical to look at why you won and why you lost, and ensure that you just don't count the score at the end of the game, but analyze each inning and determine what it was that you could have done differently, what you might have done better, and how you take what you did do well and repeat it again. We also do the same around product-specific performance, so we go really deep into the diagnostics there around what are we selling, what are we not selling, but why are we not selling, what are customers buying and not buying, and why are they not, why do we believe they're not buying? Is it an approach, is it a price, is it the product itself? So those are probably a couple big ones along the diagnostic line. Along the predictive line, there's kind of the long term and the short term, right? The short term predictive oftentimes is, looking at the pipeline stats, looking at the velocity, looking at the mix, trying to look at, what our kind of our risk metrics are as it relates to retention, and what have companies and customers looked like when they've stayed with us and renewed, and what do they look like in advance of leaving. So a little bit of reverse engineering there around that point to look at what other customers in that same state now, and trying to put some predictive analytics around which ones we need to pay a little more attention to in the latter stage of their contracts. In the long-term ones, we do a lot of market analysis. We have a long and varied history to rely on, which many organizations unfortunately do not, but I think market can still, unless you're in a brand new market that's never been created before, you can use market analysis as a proxy for historic, but we use a lot of historic. We use a lot of sales feedback from the street. We also have a sales advisory board, which we staff with members of the sales force across different roles and across different channels, and have regular meetings to convene and get information back from the street around what's working and why. Industry, and then spend a lot of time looking at best practices. I don't know if I can give any call outs to any of your peer companies out there, so I won't name any names, but I do spend a lot of time as a student of the game out looking at what's going on out in the universe of sales.
Yeah, sure. I was going to ask you some follow-up questions regarding selling time and understanding lifetime value for each customer segment, but I'm going to pivot here a little bit, because you mentioned win-loss as a way to do a diagnostic analytical approach to sales, and it sounds like you have a pretty robust win-loss program. So tell the audience a little bit about how that works. Do you do it on every deal? Do you do it on a subset of deals? Do you do it yourself? Do you have an objective third party do it? Tell me about your win-loss program.
Yeah, so we collect data on every deal, and that is with a series of questions that we pose, many of which are interactive to other questions along the line of when they close a deal. So when you close an opportunity in our CRM, which we use Salesforce.com, there I go, slipping in a company buzz. Maybe Benny off will send me a couple dollars. But we literally, when you close an opportunity, whether you win or lose the opportunity, it opens up a dialogue box of questions that talk about, who the competition was, what the reasons were that you believe that you won or lost, giving us at least some high-level data to help us track against certain competitors, against, whether it's price-related, whether it's service-related, both on the buying front and the product, both on the buying as well as the losing side of things. And then we take a subset of those and go deeper dive in them. We do them internally, which probably, I would say, is not necessarily the best practice, but we do it with an external group. So we do it with a marketing group that kind of, sets themselves up as Ryder. We're not secret shopping, I would say, with our own internal people. We do use our own internal people to literally make calls to a subset of customers as well, both more along the loss front, but even along the winning front as well, so that we can get direct feedback. Because oftentimes customers won't share 100% with their sales rep, because a lot of times, I even know now I'm in the enviable position of being a buyer instead of a seller. I like a lot of the sales reps that sell to me. I don't want to, call them out specifically or maybe call out their tactics were, so we get some better information, I think, by using a third party, even if it's an internal third party.
Yeah, very good. So audience members, this is a great way to really expand into diagnostic analytics if you're just at the descriptive stage right now. I have found this with my clients to be highly effective. I do agree with Chris that it needs to be an objective party. Now that could be another department, as it is in Ryder's case, such as the marketing department, or it could be an independent third party, and there's lots of firms out there. We're one of them that does that. But by understanding why you won, why you lost, you're really answering the question of why. And what you'll see over time is that there'll be recurring patterns and trends, and that's when you really can get into the predictive and prescriptive sides, which is if we're losing very often, and this is the common reason why we're losing, what are we going to do about it? All right, this is a good time for another break, so let's go ahead and take a second here. So let me ask you as we head into the break, would you like to implement some of the things that Christopher has spoken about today, such as this advanced win-loss analysis? If so, I think we can help you. Consider having one of our experts spend some time with you in a workshop. If you want to get a feel for what we would cover in a workshop like this, go to sbi.tips/2017 workbook and download a copy of this workbook that we use in these workshops. Okay, we got one more segment with Christopher after the break. We'll be back in a second.
Meet Tom. He's the CEO of a leading medical device company, and this is his business partner, the latest SBI workbook. Every day, Tom uses the workbook to guide his sales and marketing vision. The yellow sticky? That's his corporate strategy. The pink sticky? His product roadmap. The dog-eared section? That's where Tom's mapped out next year's growth plan. The stain on the cover? That's from the champagne he popped open when they made their Q4 number.
That was a good day, wasn't it, Mr. Workbook?
How do you SBI? Take it to the next level with the SBI Workbook. Order your copy today at howdoyousbi.com.
Welcome back, everybody. This is our last segment with Christopher Fris, Vice President of Global Sales Strategy and Sales Ops at Ryder. And we're demonstrating how to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of the sales team today. And in our last segment, I've got really three questions, and I'm gonna lump them together and give Chris the stage here. And we're gonna talk about three specific processes: the pipeline process, pipeline management process, the territory design process, and the quota setting process. And the reason why I cherry-picked these three is because these are three things that we know that sales ops leaders that have obtained the title of vice president, these are three core processes that they really focus on because they can really move the needle. So Chris, I'm going to give it over to you. If you could maybe describe for the audience your pipeline management process, your territory design process, and your quota setting process, that would be great.
Yeah, sure, Greg. I think critical, obviously, pipeline management. I don't think I need to speak to any of your audience members unless they just joined sales today in a leadership role as to how important pipeline management is. I think the critical piece, though, before you even get into that is to ensure that you feel comfortable that you are operating under a buyer-centric sales process. One of the things that we did with SBI's help, actually, when I first came over to Ryder a few years back, was to work on a redesign of our sales process, which was very Ryder-centric at the time. And as a result of Ryder-centric sales process, the Ryder-centric sales process gets defined into the pipeline stages, and whether and where the customer was in the buying journey was really a lot different oftentimes than where Ryder felt Ryder was or felt the customer was in. So I think it's critical to have that framework. With that framework, which we now have, the weekly pipeline reviews that we encourage all of our sales leadership and measure them on having with their reps are always based around that buyer-centric view as to where is the buyer in the process and the questions that you need to ask yourself at each stage of the sales process to determine what are the buying signs, not what or where you would like to feel the deal is at. We also encourage and have worked on a coaching-based methodology to that, so that it's not a beat-down session. It's not a let me bring you in and grind through your deals and push you towards closing, even though that's obviously the long-term goal. But I think the critical piece is to look at it along the lines of, okay, you need to define and stay focused on the short term that's going to bring you the money at end of month or whatever your measurement period is, but also paying attention to the medium term and coaching along the lines of how do I get to understand exactly where the buyers are at in all these processes, how do I help you move those decisions along, and how do I help you understand which ones where if the buyer's stuck, you need to get out of. And I think one of the most important pieces of effective pipeline management is not only moving deals along, but moving deals out. So let me, in the spirit of time, move on to territory design. Territory design, for us, the critical element of it is opportunity-based. So we have a very good view of what the market is in our space, and we have over time, some pretty decent data with respect to what the opportunities are out there. Obviously, it's always being tweaked along the lines of, what industries are we being more successful in, what verticals do we want to focus on, or do we have a new product to focus on, but it's always about looking at the opportunity out there first, and then determining within a certain territory, what's the coverage capabilities? We use a mapping software, name not to be mentioned. I think it is critical to enable your team. If you've got a big sales force, we're nationwide, you need to understand, to map out the territories, to understand, plot the opportunities within that mapped out territory and understand what the coverage capabilities are. I think the other critical piece to that for us is all are not equal. Many times people want to kind of split up the world perfectly because all my roles that are all called the same thing should all have the same size. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes downtown Boston might be a territory for me that's equal to an opportunity to the states of Montana and Idaho. So it is very dependent upon what is a reasonable amount of dirt to cover, but also making sure that the territories make sense to the opportunities within them. And quota setting is really, it begins with the plan, because that is, as you all know, you're always a victim of the plan you get. So it's typically for us to try and parse that plan. We're in the contract business, so we try and parse that plan between the elements of new and the elements of renewal, and then further parse the elements of new into that which we expect to get, related to growth from our existing accounts, and that which we expect to get from new logos. We also have a retention piece in, because again, being in the contract business, we'll look at retention under a pretty fine microscope about what's coming up for renewal, but also about some of the tactics which are positive for us, the company, where the reps can bring forward deals into a current year. We try and take that into account as well, so that we make sure we give an effective quota to the sales reps. And I think one of the most important things about quota setting at the end of the day is that I have fought long and hard, both at Ryder and at other organizations I've been at, and would encourage you guys to do the same, to, as much as possible, try and have that be a sales function. Another benefit of sales operations is that oftentimes finance people will then acquiesce to quota being a sales function, because finance people will typically take the, pie and divide it by X, and that's what you get. And I think while that in the end game is what has to be done with the plan, but how you divide the pie and who gets what slice of the pie and how big of a slice of the pie can they consume is critical to you being able to achieve the plans, which are usually pretty overstated, that you get tasked with. So.
Yep. All right, very good. So there was some pearls of wisdom there. I asked you kind of three big questions. It was a little unfair of me, and we do have a little bit of a time constraint. But let me just recap for the audience the wisdoms that came out of there. So the pipeline management process, the big headline from Chris's example was, it needs to be buyer-driven. So your pipeline management system is accurate or inaccurate based on whether or not it's driven by the buyer. Territory design process needs to be opportunity-based. I mean, that's a simple thing, but trust me, this is what I do for a living. I see a lot of territory design systems that are not opportunity-based, and as a result of that, you have imbalanced territories. Some reps have great territories, some reps have bad territories, et cetera, et cetera. So make it opportunity-based. And then the quota setting process, here's the headline from Chris's example. Do not let that be done by finance. I know my finance friends listening right now are going to be upset with me, but if you do that, you're going to have a peanut butter spread quota setting process. I need $100 million, I got 100 reps, so everybody gets $1 million quota. Well, that doesn't work. The guy in downtown Manhattan is going to have more opportunity than the person in Mobile, Alabama. So it's got to be well thought out, and the way that you do that is you intelligently allocate it out based on pipeline and territories, et cetera. All right, Chris, my friend, we are out of time, but I wanted to thank you on behalf of our audience. I know you're a busy executive, and taking time out to come on the show today was not free, but your contribution back to our body of knowledge is helpful. Your peers learned from you today, so hopefully we can repay the favor in the future. But thanks for coming on the show.
Great, Greg. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Okay, and I want to thank the SBI audience for tuning in. Get this, last month our show hit another milestone, something we're pretty proud of. 40% of our listeners hold the title of VP or higher. This tells us that senior executives are tuning in. That is one heck of a demographic, and we will work hard to keep earning the attention of senior executives. So thank you for your continued support. If you want to learn more about this topic or the other areas that we focus on, you can check us out at salesbenchmarkindex.com/register, and I'd advise you to create an account. Why? This allows you to personalize your experience with our content. For example, you can choose the topics that you're interested in and how often you want to learn about them, and we publish a lot. We have a morning edition and an afternoon edition, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if you don't personalize your experience with us, you're going to get overwhelmed by the amount of content that we produce. As always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.